So now what about you yourself personally? What are like the struggles, the greatest struggle you've encountered while writing nonfiction?
Writing nonfiction as opposed to other genre?
Yeah.
Well, I think when you're writing about the self, the danger is being self-serving. So my book about being a writer, the reason the irony is there is because the writer's impulse towards self-pity or self-aggrandizement, which is what allows you to, the self-aggrandizement is what allows you to imagine yourself a writer, and the self-pity is part of being an artist in a brutally crude capitalist culture, which doesn't give us a free lunch, as we have in some other countries, you know. So the danger is self-aggrandizement and self-pity, I think, is part of it. But then I think in any kind of writing, the hunger, the obstacle is to get to the heart of the story. What was really going on? There's back in whatever that was, the 80s, when Norman Mailer wrote that book about the murderer, Gary Gilmore. And the first part of his book is about Gary Gilmore, and the second part of his book is about Norman Mailer and this entrepreneur getting the rights to do Gary Gilmore's story. So that when Norman Mailer did this, he pulled the curtain back to say, wait a minute, I can't just write about Gary Gilmore without implicating myself. Because that's what it is. I live in the world, and I had to be affiliated, I had to be a hustler to get the rights to this story. And I worked, you know, with a guy who was very clever at this, so I'm not going to pretend that God sent me to do Gary Gilmore's story. And that was a wonderful thing in journalistic creative nonfiction, to see people saying, we have to tell more of the story, get closer to the lived reality, and stop the kind of laundering of story that often goes on, where you don't see what's going on backstage. So I think for writers to be able to position themselves vis-a-vis their material in order to implicate themselves. No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, meaning not just hard work causing tears, but tears in a sense of getting to the heart of one's own relationship to the material and one's own need to have written that material. That takes some deep diving. And then when you do that in creative nonfiction, now you're talking about the same qualities as great fiction. You know, what in Anna Karenina, in Tolstoy, elicits his great compassion for everyone in that novel. Everybody, he understands their pain. He feels their pain. That's remarkable. So in nonfiction, you have to aspire to that kind of humanity and implicate yourself in that humanity.